You may know of a fellow named Sargon of Akkad. He isn't very fond of the Democratic candidate for president, Hillary Clinton. This is understandable, as many find her to be unrelatable and manipulating. Or so I've heard. I don't give much of a shit about politics. Sargon, referred to here on out as Carl, is not like this, as in he is obsessed with politics, history and philosophy. Perfectly respectable interests, I am sure you agree. Recently Carl let his obsession with politics and hatred of Mrs. Clinton override his rational thinking, and made quite a significantly idiotic blunder. In trying to prove that the polls are rigged against Donald Trump, the Republican candidate for president, he retweeted a tweet by someone called I Am Very Silky, who is using some of the hacked or leaked poster emails to show the proof of the alleged poll manipulation. I am assuming these were for internal campaign polling, in which case it wouldn't be a sign of useful polling manipulation. And even if it wasn't internal, it wouldn't account for Mrs. Clinton's lead in many other independent polls. But let's look at the emails themselves to see what the actual proof of polling manipulation is, shall we? Hey, when can we meet? I also want to get your Atlas folks to recommend oversamples for our polling before we begin in February. By market, regions, etc. I want to get this all compiled into one set of recommendations so we can maximize what we get out of our media polling. Tom. Firstly, this was sent in 2008. This is hardly a sign of current 2016 polling manipulation. Secondly, oversampling is not manipulating the polling, unless you count increasing the accuracy. The person thinking this is a sign of polling manipulation is mistaking sampling with weighting. Oversampling simply means collecting data from a larger than needed sample, and that can either be for a subset of your overall sample, for example an ethnic demographic, or it could be for your entire sample. In both cases accuracy would be increased. This would only make the polling misleading if the data was weighted by amateurs. For example, if you had a town of 90% whites and 10% blacks, but collected data from whites and blacks equally so that blacks accounted for 50% of the sample and whites the other 50%, that in of itself is not skewing the polling. It would make the polling vastly more accurate for blacks and much more inaccurate for whites if the oversampling was that extreme, which it likely wouldn't be. But if you weighted it as you would in any polling, it wouldn't skew the numbers so that the losing candidate was winning. It would only affect the polling if you weighted it so that the population was represented as 50-50, and not 90-10. If you sample 50-50 and weight 90-10, then there is no misrepresentation, just greater accuracy for the 10 than the 90. The second screenshot has highlighted lines that say to oversample Hispanics and to oversample Native Americans. Again, this is not related to polling manipulation, as how the poll is or was weighted is not included in the screenshots. If you were to oversample Hispanics and then weight it so that Hispanics were overrepresented, then that would drastically affect the polls. Simply oversampling Hispanics would not be enough to change the outcome of the polling, as long as you weighted it to represent the population. As Native Americans and Hispanics both vote Democrat more than Republican, it makes sense that Democrats would want to oversample Hispanics and Native Americans, so that they can, as they said previously, maximize what they get out of media polling. I will end this with a message to Sargon. Please do not obsess over politics to the point where you see conspiracies everywhere. Rationally speaking, buffing a candidate up in the polls would only hurt them, as people are less likely to feel the need to vote as they think it is a more sure victory anyway. Trump is not a scientifically minded man. He is not even a rationally minded man. He isn't even a smart man, nor is he even of average intelligence, and I am pretty sure he is more Oompa Loompa than a man. Don't let his idiocy rub off on you. Good science beats politics every time.